Hello everybody and welcome to the World Series League's GT3 Championship EU. It's Season 4 powered by IMB and it's great to be back for Round 2. It was a great start to the Championship at Spa. Some absolutely wonderful racing took place between the near 60 cars that we got on the grid. I have to say that despite the much shorter circuit here at the Hockenheim, we haven't got very many fewer cars on the grid. So it's going to be an exciting one. Not, of course, the old-fashioned Hockenheimring that some of us may remember. But it is, in fact, the new version. Should still provide us with some good racing, if not a little bit scary, especially down towards the hairpin. But let's wait and see. My name's Ian O'Leary. I'm alongside Zach Sweeney for tonight's racing. And Zach, I counted 54 cars earlier. And there's only 4.5 kilometres around here. It's going to be very, very busy.
It is. So far this season we had the pre-race at Le Mans, and then we went, of course, to Spa. Two, relatively long circuits. Now we come to the Hockenheimring, which is a little bit shorter than the pair of them. Spa, of course, is 7 kilometers. Le Mans is something like 13, I think, and then we come to Hockenheim, 4.5. So yeah, it's going to be quite crammed for space, and there's going to be a lot of cars on track. Particularly, it's going to come into into play when it comes to the reverse grid 50-minute, because when it comes to lap traffic and pit stops and things like that, with the shorter circuit, it's definitely going to get busy and certainly could spice things up just a little bit.
And in terms of actually making some overtakes, it's not that easy either, really. In terms of the championship standings, we'll briefly talk over those over the next few hours. Stuart Reynolds has taken the top spot in Pro by a few points ahead of Elliot Hellier, and Jonas Dreyer as well. Who is very much up there. I can't help but feel there were some post-race penalties, unless I'm misremembering the results. But either way, it was very crazy towards the end of Spa, especially in Pro. In Pro-Am, Lucas Romano was absolutely smashing everybody. And so his 2 race victories have gotten him a 13-point lead coming out the first round. And in the Am standings, Tom Bingham has taken the top spot after his win in race 2. He's only got 1 point over Doug Bautza, so it's very early stages. And it's still very close. There's going to be many more twists in the tail from here on in. But the important thing to note this time around, Zach, is that you can't take your drop week in the final round. So I feel like we're more guaranteed a championship finale this season compared to what we got last season, which was just Alex Urenga winning.
Yeah, I mean, thankfully and sort of not thankfully as well, because Alex Urenga gave us some great moments. But for those that want to win a championship, it's great because Alex Urenga isn't on the grid this season. So they sort of get a chance that should be a lot closer. So far this season, we've been, teased with things being a lot closer in terms of competitiveness up and down the field. So yeah, this really should be a good one. But again, it's only round 2. There's still a lot of questions to be answered.
There absolutely are, and a few of them may get answered here. We're very close to starting the first 25-minute race of the evening, so let's go through the grid quickly. Paul Busby with the pole position here ahead of Neil Butler. Championship leader Stuart Reynolds in third, alongside Albin Kjellberg, who had a disaster at Spa. We'll see how today goes for him. Callum Beament rounding out the top 5 with Thomas Reiter, Chris Chatterton, Kenny Hermans, Arjuis Yamatas, and also Harry Wills rounding out your top 10 in the Pro standings. Then moving down to Pro-Am as well, because there are 54 cars. We'll get through them quickly. Phoenix Pearl at first here ahead of Didier de Vlaming. Then it is John Williams and Lucas Romano, championship leader, only 4th. Edward Packer 5th ahead of Chris Thacker. Then it's Dean Timms, who's surprisingly far down, I have to say. Liam Ahern, a possible surprise as well there in 8th with Daniel Merchant and also Simon Dodd rounding up the top 10 in Pro-Am. And then in the Am category, it's Lewis Bouvier once again on the first position ahead of Jasper Sarks. Then it's Dirk Boutz and Tony Norgren on the next row. James Sates rounding out the top 5. Gus Franken is 6th ahead of Euron Reigns. Navarro de Boiver next. He's ahead of Carl Pearson, Connor Botting, who round out the 5th row of that grid. It is a really large grid here today, Zach. 54 cars on there. It's going to be a very crazy race. But the championship leaders are not doing that particularly well, especially in Pro and Pro-Am.
Going to spice things up for sure. It could open the opportunity for some interesting moments. And as you say, a little bit difficult to overtake around the Hockenheimring, so they might struggle to find their way through. But of course, the long run through the Parabolica and towards the Spitzker hairpin could open the door for a couple of opportunities, especially on those opening laps. So certainly a lot to dissect, I'm sure, in the opening moments of this race.
It certainly will be. Let's see how they all, first of all, get through turn 1, and if they make it to the hairpin, how are they going to get through there as well? Going through the final corner right now, it's an all Porsche front row, and it's going to be Paul Busby in control of the field. Only 6th after the first round at Spa. Only one top 5 to his name as well, but he's gotten the Hockenheimring off to the best possible start. The lights are on and they're just as quickly out as Paul Busby takes the racing line going towards turn 1. Neil Butler not able to challenge him at all as they go through the very fast first right-hander of this track, and Albin Kjellberg challenging for second already. Outside line for Neil Butler. He can't make that work. This is all allowing Busby to get away that little bit. Felix Pio now in control of the Pro-Am field, and he's gotten off to a very nice start as well. John Williams trying to challenge Didier de Vlaeminck, and he does that into turn 1. There's a spin in the background, and thankfully the spinner doesn't collect anybody. It's Chris Thacker from the top 5 or so who spun around. The AM drivers thankfully are far enough behind for it not to matter. Louis Boubier taking them to the line right now to begin their race, almost a minute behind the Pro cars. They're going to be almost wondering about getting lapped very, very early on in this race. Boubier gets off to a nice start though, and he's already got a few car lengths on the field. All 3 pole sitters actually getting off to very clean starts.
Yeah, not really much that you can contest down into the Nord curve here at the Hockenheimring. It's a very quick right-hander, so no one really making much of a move, but you can see down in towards turn 2, a couple of moves going down, everyone running too wide, trying to find the space, but that outside line does kill your momentum, does give you the inside for turn 3, as we can see they're running side by side between the Porsche and the BMW, but it does kill your momentum, as we see with Norgrand and Slate. Now everyone tucking back in a single file, back up to the Pro-Ams, because Felix Payal has got a pretty good lead, but John Williams back onto his tail, and again, I'm going to say it, definitely in part thanks to that slipstream down towards turn 6 at the hairpin.
It was a little bit disappointing at Spa, John Williams, compared to what we saw from him last season, where he was very strong indeed. A little bit maybe below that in the opening round. He did get a 4th place in race 2, but might have expected a little bit more. He's hounding for first at the moment as we go back to the AM drivers who are getting their race very much underway. It's Paul Busby who's taken an early lead though. Albin Kjellberg, who was really the talking point of the media day at Le Mans 2 weeks ago, right on his tail in second, looking to try and get that race win and really get his season off to a start. He really didn't score very many points at all. Well, he scored 12, not very many in that opening round, and he has now taken the lead. He has taken the lead into the hairpin by the looks of things, where most of the action happens, in all honesty, at this circuit, although try turning that to the Pro-Ams, who are currently going around turn 2. That's gone wrong for one of them, dropping down the order very quickly indeed in the mid-pack. But this is the kind of thing you'd expect from the opening laps in a race like this. Kjellberg has taken the lead though, and it's no surprise to see that it happened down at the hairpin.
Yeah, for sure. He's maximising all his opportunities possible. Albin Kjellberg is a driver with so much potential, so much pace, and unfortunately, as you say, he wasn't quite able to utilise it to his full extent at Spa, but he's coming back strong, and he's definitely making a statement here at the Hockenheimring. The fight for 10th and just all the mid-places in the AMs really still to be decided. You can see a ton of cars all in the same shot as they run their way down in towards the Spitzkehrer hairpin. This is the move potentially for what could be P2 as Norgard and Dean Timms unfortunately has gone off, so it already was a poor qualifying performance for him, and it's gone even worse.
I think it was Dean Timms anyway. It might not have been him, but certainly someone. No, it wasn't him. He's driving a BMW this season. Of course he is. Well, it just changed. Yeah, that's something we didn't, or that I didn't mention. He's car swapped from the Mercedes to the BMW, so it wasn't him. It may have been Taylor Lane. Now this is a separate one to what I saw. Another. Well, he has just pulled off there, so I don't know what that's all about from Taylor Lane, but either way, he is out of things now. This is what I saw. It was Esravel Haddad, actually, in a very similar livery to what Dean Timms has had for the last couple of seasons, but it's not him. It's El Haddad instead, who's really waiting to get his season off to a start as well, and that was a weird one. Under brakes. You don't often see Mercedes losing under brakes with the ABS that these GT3s have. It's not normally a problem.
No, not usually, but again, that Mercedes corner, that left-hander, is a bit of a weird one because you can carry quite a bit of speed, but easy to get caught out by the weight shift. But now we can see Felix Payal under a world of pressure from John Williams, who's now trying to go for the move to the outside of the hairpin. You've got to spot your braking point well. You can see John Williams going the long way round, brakes very, very late, but Payal holds firm to the inside. Williams with the outside line with that momentum gets the straighter drive off the corner. They are going to run side by side on the run now towards the Mercedes arena, and what it's going to do is going to give Williams not only the nose ahead going in, but also that inside line.
And he's got the lead as John Williams here. He gets pressured a little bit by Felix Payal there, but not too much. A side by side for second. Neil Butler wants second place at a Paul Busby. That was close between the two as they go left then right towards the final couple of corners. Busby pushed out wide, and there's just a train of Porsches waiting as Thomas Reiter is now on his inside line. Championship leader Stuart Reynolds just watching on from behind, and once again having a very safe and nice drive at the moment inside the top 10. Exactly what you need for a championship charge, which he's having right now. Down towards turn 2 they go. Reister once again looking for his way down the inside. Busby's not going to let that one go easily. He's going to have the inside for 3 and then 4. And he is going to hold on by the looks of things. Reister's going to duck back in again. Although he may be too close enough to really get the slingshot here. He's just ended up pushing his fellow Porsche around the parabolica and towards the hairpin now as well. Here he comes down the inside. Going to have to be late on the brakes, but Busby was later and will come across slightly. Will try and shut the door, but he gets shoved out wide and he's going to lose a lot now as Stuart Reynolds comes down his inside and he clears him. Also, the pole sitter is down to 5th.
Beautiful stuff there from Stuart Reynolds, and unfortunate for Paul Busby there to have lost 4 places in the opening 6 minutes of this race, but that's sometimes how the cookie crumbles. Stuart Reynolds is doing a really good job, as you say, coming into this as the championship leader, has that different mentality and wants to pick his way through nice and sensibly, get those positions nice and easy, doesn't want to pick fights that he knows he could potentially lose. So up to 4th place now, and definitely a good shout for the podium, maybe even 2nd place, but a lot kicking off up and down all the categories, especially amongst that mid-pack. It's going to be absolute chaos. That's at the moment is the fight for what is going to be P12 overall. Gio Hooten just in front of Alex Bomberg, Michael Patterman and Stefan Schuster in P15. You can see there, oh my word, that was very late on the brakes from Michael Patterman. In fact, actually gave the Audi a bit of a tap as they ran through the Mercedes arena section. He certainly looks eager to find a way through.
Yeah, absolutely, and side by side in towards the Mobil 1 curve as well as Tony Norgran makes his way inside the top 10. The all-important top 10, of course, because that way you will benefit from the reverse grid, where you wouldn't if you were outside of it. Side by side for 10th as well in the AM category. Conderbotting down the inside here. Sorry, down the outside, I should say. Mark Bailey on the inside. I think he's going to hold on to that all-important top 10 place, but it's very much being fought over quite fiercely at the moment. With Van Hoornakker also trying to make his way down the inside. Won't be able to do it into the Mobil 1 curve, which is very quick. Down there at turn 11, and you don't often see moves made there for good reason. John Williams, though, nice lead from him in the Pro-Am category. Interesting to see, though, that Lucas Romano only 4th place, so wondering whether BMW maybe wasn't as strong here at the Hockenheim than it is at Spa. However, seeing that it absolutely is, because John Williams is currently leading, so I'm not sure why Romano is not quite as strong as he was last week.
Could be a track-by-track thing. Maybe he just really loves Spa. Of course, it was his home race, being Belgian, and naturally, you know, everyone's sort of a little bit better at Spa, especially at the home race as well. So it does help to have that sort of morale boost and things like that, even in the world of sim racing. And still, he's running really well in P4 so far in the Pro-Am, despite the fact it's quote-unquote not quite the best of starts for him. So yeah, and of course, don't forget we've still got the reverse grid race coming up, and he could actually still be a good contender for that if he can pick his way through. And he seems to be quite clever on strategy as well. We saw it at Spa, so do not count Lucas Romano out by any stretch of the imagination whatsoever. He definitely will be one to surprise you. This at the moment is our overall race leader in the pro category, Albin Kjellberg, and well, he really hasn't looked back since taking the lead early on.
That's 2 BMWs in 2 of the categories now leading. Kjellberg has got a nice gap over Butler. There are some pretty big gaps inside the podium places in Pro at the moment, but Stuart Reynolds is still trying to get away from Paul Busby. In fact, actually, might have been a change since we were last looking at it. There's the other BMW that's leading by good few tenths of a second right now. Tim Ahern challenging for a top 5 just in the background there, with Packer just up in front of him, and the only non-BMW leading a category right now is Louis Bouvier again in the Audi. Had a really strong performance in the first round, however didn't really have anything to show for it on that occasion. He got second in race 1 and then an incident in race 2 put him way down, and that's put him way down the start. Oh my goodness, it's what's gone on here. Stuart Reynolds is off, as well as Harry Wills. So's Paul Busby. There's clearly been an accident in the battle for 4th place. This is Paul Busby trying to get through on Stuart Reynolds into the Mercedes section. He's down the inside, and Stuart Reynolds doesn't really see it coming. They both go around, and it's a calamity as Stuart Reynolds, well, rejoins the circuit straight in the path of his teammate there.
Yeah, not great for Stuart Reynolds and easy to do in the desperation of things. But yeah, it was a dodgy move. He's always going to be going for a dive bomb into the Mercedes sector. But yeah, things happen. It was a shame that it had that knock-on effect. This is Glenn Humberstone now looking to the inside of Jarmo Sastmoinen. Might actually be on a bit of pressure from his teammate in the Porsche just in behind of Schill. But again, everyone tucking in behind, because it's very risky going for a late braking move when you've got a multitude of cars just in front of you. If you get it wrong, you're taking out a couple of cars. And especially if you rejoin the circuit a little bit dodgily, as Stuart Reynolds very, very quickly found out, unfortunately for him. But it is a shame for the championship leader, of course. He's going to need to bounce back very, very quickly. But for a driver like Stuart Reynolds, that shouldn't be too difficult.
I don't think so. He's championship leader, of course, after the opening couple of rounds of this championship. We go back to the pros now, as Kenny Hermans has really benefited from this. So has Chris Chatterton as well. In 4th place, Callum Beeman is kind of where he was in 6th place. He had a nice qualifying actually, but slipped early on in the race. He's back again now, very much on the back of a couple of BMWs just up in front of him as things stand. Behind though is where the big names are, and Paul Busby's down in pit lane, so clearly there is some damage on that car. He's been in there for more than a minute now. He's been overtaken by a lot of drivers. Started on pole, of course, and now he's down 51st overall. It's not been a good start. Him, as Jonas Dreyer, is the one really at the front of this train. It's very important, though, for Stuart Reynolds to at least get in the top 10 and benefit from that reverse grid, which is kind of very much like what he did in the first race last week as well. I know he was 4th place, but he was languishing towards the bottom end of the top 10 early on. Obviously came back to win race 2, but he does need this top 10.
He does. It is the ever crucial part of the of the category to be able to benefit off that pole position, and yeah, fingers crossed for him, he will be able to benefit from it. For those new to the series, it is well, we do work with 3 categories, and we do run a reverse grid race as well. If you are trying to spot a particular category, we've got white for the pros, then it goes to blues for the pro-am, sort of the middle class, and then red banners for the AMs, just in case it can get a little bit confusing. There is a lot of cars on track, there's a lot to dissect, and it can be just a little bit difficult to do, but yeah, there is certainly no absence of action, especially around a circuit like the Hockenheimring, and the calendar that we've got set up for ourselves as well today. Here comes Humberstone to the outside of Sachs curve. That's going to be very impressive. You can see there Sastmoinen caught on the inside, but he gets forced out. Oh my word, Humberstone comes back into the path of his teammate of Schill. He's going to rejoin just ahead of him, but again, getting caught up on that curve, running wide just a little bit, and unfortunately for Glenn Humberstone, he's been caught on the worst end of that one.
Yeah, it was hard to know where to point that blame, really, because there was certainly a bit of contact involved with Sastmoinen shoving Schill out wide there, but then again he was on the curb going through the Sachs curve there, which you very rarely see, and very rarely do. So that's a confusing one. Didier Devant gets himself up into 3rd place now, or stays in 3rd place, I should say, ahead of Romano, but it might not be for long, my goodness. Over the curb at turn 10, right off onto the tarmac on the outside of that corner as well. Romano is going to close back in once again, so this is a fight for the last spot on the podium here in race 1. We're just over half distance now in this first race. Romano will, of course, want this podium just to boost his points tally that little bit, although then again his closest rivals indeed not really ahead of him in this race. Philip Perl is 3rd, I guess, in the standings, but it's too early to be worrying about that particularly. These guys certainly do, of course, to be worried. This is a dangerous group of 5 at the moment, heading down towards turn 6, down at the hairpin. Yamatas with nice slipstream, but not really close enough to make a dive on Jonas Dreyer, is he? I say that, he's gone for it anyway. Late on the brakes, they both go directly for the corner, they both overshoot it, and Jonas Dreyer saw exactly what was happening there and goes to the inside line himself, looking to try and take 7th place away. Side by side now, between the two of them. Through goes Kieran Smart on the outside line. Oh, free wide as they go in. Smart didn't realise, gets tipped around. Stuart Reynolds will gain 3 places in one corner, and that was, well, dangerous, really, from all of them. 3 wide into that corner was never really going to work.
No, not at all, and Jumantas already under a bit of pressure. He's come out of this in P9, but that's such a shame for Kieran Smart, because he pulled a stroke of genius. He saw what was coming. He knew they were going to go in deep. You can see Jumantas coming from an absolute mile back, pulled out as late as possible, late on the brakes, just about got it stopped. You can see a bit of a squirm, forced out Jonas Dreyer. Kieran Smart says thank you very much, then gets the drive off the corner, but you can see there with Jonas Dreyer, I think, just not getting getting quite an overwhelming bit of slipstream, and was forced really to just go to the inside, was trying to go for 2 and 1, trying to be clever. Kieran Smart trying to sail his way around the outside, and then of course Jonas Dreyer on the inside, with it being 3 wide. Naturally Smart's going to want to come across, and then it's just that slight tag. In fact, actually there was no contact whatsoever, and you could probably fit a double-decker bus in between those two. So even if there was contact, that'd be a shame for Kieran Smart, but the fact there wasn't, it's just it's even more salt in the wound.
Yeah, I mean, either way, he didn't realise that they were 3 wide and give the space there either, so I guess it wasn't too bad in the end anyway. But Lucas Romano certainly applying the pressure right now. Back to the Pro-Ams we go in this fight for 3rd place, and De Vlaeminck is looking increasingly in danger, I should say, in this 3rd place right now. Lucas Romano all over him, no space to the inside. He's going to have to go outside this time. He breaks early, anticipating Vlaeminck going wide, but he doesn't, and instead he's the one going wide. Around the curb he goes, and he will not get 3rd place on that particular occasion, as Carl Pearce also on way too tight of a line into turn 1 and will lose out to Jasper Charks as a result of that.
Beautiful stuff from Jasper Chark, yes, to go around the outside here. Stuart Reynolds under a bit of pressure from Jonas Dreyer. They head in towards the Sachs curve. They've also got Humantis for company. Stuart Reynolds, of course, tagged up in a bit of an incident earlier on and is trying to recover. Still inside the top 10, though, up to P7, so still benefiting quite well off the reverse grid format for race number 2. It's what got him the race win last time out at Spa, so hoping to replicate that success, but he's got to be careful amongst this pack, because if he falls to the back of it, he's outside that top 10 and crucially outside that chance for reverse grid pole.
Absolutely, and that is exactly what you want. Well, obviously you want better than 10th, but you can console yourself with the reverse grid pole. At the moment, all 4 of these in this group are going to be getting that because of the spin for Kieran Smart, who's now on the back of Andy Miller for 11th place. And you might see them just coming around the corner now in the background. There they are, just fighting over that 11th place. For these 4, they look like they're in sort of an agreement. 3 of them obviously in the same livery, which doesn't help, as Lucas Romano suddenly finds himself in 6th place and a good 3 seconds back on Vlaeminck, who he was previously battling with. So I don't know whether there was a mistake or an incident there. Either way, he is certainly further back than what we saw from him earlier on in, 2 minutes ago, from him in that fight for 3rd place. 4 of these run down to the hairpin and will stay single file, but it'll be interesting to see how Lucas Romano has ended up here.
Yeah, indeed so. It is uncharacteristic for him to really make any major mistakes, but still unfortunate. Here's Jeremy De Boyver trying to go for the move to the inside of Simon Dodd. Not quite going to materialise from him, but Dodd goes a little bit wide. That's going to invite De Boyver to the inside, but with that slightly tighter line, it does mean that Simon Dodd is able to keep his foot in the long way around and get the drive off the corner. So it's going to have to be a bit of a waiting game for the Belgian, who did really, really well last season in the standings and was hoping to come into this season a little bit better, but unfortunately hasn't quite hit the ground running. This is back to that train, as we saw a little bit earlier on. That was Harry Wills going off the exit of the Sud curve, the final corner here at Hockenheim, and losing a little bit of time. But fortunately for him, this train is still fairly bunched up, still headed by Stuart Reynolds, and yeah, still going to keep our eye on this one, because when you've got 4 cars this close, certainly something's bound to happen, especially when Harry Wills is braking that late for T2 and certainly looks eager to make up some places.
It is very close, but I don't know how likely it is that these guys are really going to want to change position too much here, because as I mentioned, 3 of them are in the same car and the same livery, which means there's really not a lot going to happen there, and there's no front end on this BMW at all with Daniel Merchant. So, and it's before this, something has clearly gone on again. He's going to get hit here, is he? Oh no, he's just going to mind out the way. I think that might be Paul Busby actually, returning from the pit lane. It's not, but one of the Porsches making their way through. And this is before we were just looking at going down towards the hairpin. Oh, that was close. And a spin for Jonas Dreyer. That's especially confusing, I guess, because these cars have traction control, and it's very rare to see someone lose traction just like that.
It is, and that's a very stricken Ferrari as well he's going to run side by side with, and that is unfortunate for Jonas Dreyer, because it again is a really weird incident. There's not something, as you say, it's not something we often see at all, because it's so hard to spin up those rear tyres unless he's still turning. It was the curb that got him, unsettled the rear end of the car and sent him round, so it wasn't necessarily a traction issue, more so just the car being unsettled over the curb. This is still Daniel Merchant carrying on without a front end, and that is certainly less than ideal. But seeing a lot of weird incidents happen today, whether it be slight bits of contact, spins in cars that have traction control, or just people pulling their way back onto the circuit, it definitely is spicing things up just a little bit and shaking the order up just a little bit, especially amongst that midfield.
Kieran Smart has got his top 10 back again now as a result of that, as Dean Timms loses a couple of places around the final couple of corners. He's been sliding and going off onto the drag strip on the outside line. Didn't want to rejoin in the path of those two BMWs, so stayed out wide and lost 2 places as a result. Lucas Romano's back to the top 5, and Liam Ahern is back to 6th place. In the AM category, this fight for 6th is not quietening down either. Navarro de Boiva on the defensive from Jasper Starks just up in front. I want to see just how close the leaders, the likes of Albin Kjellberg, are getting to these guys though, because you can just see him. Yeah, I mean, Kjellberg has just lapped Daniel Merchant there. Jürgen Knockhart is not too far in front of Albin Kjellberg at all, as Jeroen Reigns has found himself in the pit wall here. You very rarely see that whenever anyone's going to the pit lane, never mind when they're trying to stay out on the road, so goodness knows what's going to happen here.
Well, we'll have a look. He's going to go through, maybe get up on that sausage curb and, yeah, spin him round. And then maybe try and accelerate. Maybe he just didn't turn back onto the circuit, not enough turning circle. Then when you're onto the grass, yeah, that is... I mean, he didn't make necessarily contact with it, but, yeah, it's still unfortunate for him to have to reverse back onto the circuit, and certainly a kill to the momentum. This is the fight for 4th. Between Kenny Harriman and Bayman, just in behind the fight between the pair of them for the fringes of the top 5. Bit of a gap up to the top 3 because Albin Kjellberg is sort of running away with it, but Neil Butler's keeping him fairly honest, about 2.5 seconds back, and then Thomas Reiter is just holding firm in P3, so certainly is a fight for 4th. They've also got Chris Chatterton just in the background there, so if these two get up to any shenanigans, certainly could see the 6th place man crawl his way into this fight. But you can see there, Callum Beeman in the Porsche closing at a rate of knots on the run now towards the Spitzke hairpin. Harriman going semi-defensive. Beeman looking for the space, having to move again does the BMW. They are going to be very shaky on this now run to the braking zone. Harriman goes in deep though. Does Beeman see it coming? Yes, he does, but he has to slam on the anchors. Does get the drive off the corner, but Harriman just about, I think, is going to still have the drive to hang on.
Not sure where Hermans has actually got his damage from, but either way that can't be helping either, as Beeman looks to the inside. He's switching lines so many times on these straights, looking to find any which way through, as they're going to come up to 2 laps to go at the line here now. And Hermans just defending for his life, going towards the Mobile 1 curve. Now he's going to stay in front through here, you'd imagine, into the stadium section, as Chatterton tries to close in on the 2 of them. You can see the Eclipse BMW just in the background, trying to get on terms. I think his charge is a bit too late for him to really get involved. But either way, Herman's going to go through these final couple of corners and try and hold on again here. It's Jeremy De Boiva now trying to make his way through on Simon Dodd. Both these two found themselves down lower than they were in qualifying, especially Simon Dodd, who got to 7th place on lap 1, now defending for 13th. Both of these two going to find themselves working their way through the order in race 2 as well.
Oh yeah, very, very true indeed, because they are going to have to start where they finish. This is Connor Botting trying to make up some places. That is Navarro de Boiva in 5th place. Now to the inside, they are going to come to contact, but neither of them going to spin out. You can see there Pierce just trying to find a way through as well, but Connor Botting is going to hang on, but certainly a little bit controversial because of the contact between them. Now has Navarro de Boiva got the run towards the Mercedes Arena section, not quite close enough, so it seems like the 66 Audi is going to hang on, but with Pierce menacingly in the background there, you can see Botting trying to hang on to what is the fringes of the top 5, which is a fairly good milestone to try and hang on to. But for Navarro de Boiva, getting himself inside the top 5 certainly is going to be quite the notable achievement for him.
It certainly is. There's a whole train of cars going through here. Most of these are AMs, as you can see. That's McKeown just looking for a way through, and Van Hoornacker at the moment in the BMW. These guys fighting over the final spots inside the top 10. Richardson's going to hold on from El Haddad, who's not really been able to climb up from where he was after his spin down at turn 7. Turn 8, I should say. Yeah, disappointment maybe for him as Albin Kjellberg comes over the line for the penultimate time. Less than a minute to go. This will be the last lap of the race. El Haddad's going to look to the inside. They're both going to dive for the apex, and they're both going to go too wide in that one. If either of them have broken at the correct point, then they would have had the position, but in the end they both went wide.
Yeah, I think Al Haddad just sort of scared Hockenheimring is going in deep, but now it's going to materialise itself back again. Is Al Haddad going to have a look into towards the Mercedes? Not quite, because the Finn manages to hang on, has to break again though. So an interesting fight between these guys is, oh my word, we jump to the fight now for P4 amongst the Pro-Ams, because Edward Packer leads the way from Lucas Romano back up in a P5, but closely followed by the likes of Liam Mahern. Just behind him, then Dean Timms and Sebastian Norgran to round off this sort of 5-car train. And oh my word, it is all kicking off amongst the AMs as well, because Timo McEwen is involved, and I think Schill is leading this train. There is a lot going on, a lot of fights certainly everywhere. Big lunge from the BMW, not quite going to materialise, still going to run side by side. I think that's between Gus Franken and Van Hoenacker as they run through now the right-hander. There goes the Belgian a little bit wide once more, and because of the large train, is everyone just going to try and freight train their way through.
Van Hoenacker went from 7th place down to 11th here in one lap now as Humberstone gets through. And look at this, Albin Kjellberg trying to find his way through as well. Humberstone slows in front of him. Traffic is going to be a nightmare in the second race here, because you can see these guys are getting onto the back of the AMs already. Kjellberg though comes through and he dives down the inside at the penultimate corner. Doesn't want to get involved in an incident late on. He won't. He'll just about hold on to the lead. And the win here in race 1 at Hockenheim for Albin Kjellberg, who puts things right after a disaster at Spa. It's much better at the Hockenheim as Neil Butler doesn't get through any of those AMs to finish in second. Thomas Reiter rounding off the podium. Just seen a few positional changes in Pro-Am as well, as Lucas Romano gets himself up into 4th place. Right at the end there, they're all behind John Williams though, who's going to take a 3.5 second win here ahead of Felix Pearl. Didier Vlaminck just in behind them as well. He's going to be 3rd ahead of that battle between Romano and the rest. He gets 4th ahead of a big train, a very big train in the Pro-Am category, mostly made up of BMWs as well. Bizarrely, as Pedro also has a problem on this last lap. He was 11th, maybe in a fight with Alex Bomberg as well, but he's dropped down now, 15th, and he'll get going again. There's Al Haddad making his way through as well. He's going to hold off Hootanen to the line, as not far behind. There he is in the Audi. Luis Boubier is going to win once again here in the AM category. He'll come over the line to win race 1 at the Hockenheim, and that is a fantastic start for him. 2nd place in race 1 last week, 1st place this week in race 1. Norgran will be 2nd ahead of Dirk Bouts, who holds off James Slates to the line. It's a decent first 25-minute race for this evening. Now, I mean, towards the end there, we saw a lot of traffic. That's going to be a huge problem in race 2.
Yeah, it is. And of course, we do double the race distance as well. It was pretty manic. I think because of how spaced out the starts are, of course, with now 3 categories, 3 starts, and you have to have 3 different space intervals. Oh, well, yeah, 2 different space intervals between the pros and the AMs and the pro-AMs and the AMs. But still, there is still quite a bit of time differential between the pros getting underway and the AMs getting underway. And by the time the AMs get underway, the pros are already sort of half, 3/4 of the way around the lap. So, yeah, it already sets itself up to be quite a close gap between the quickest of the pros and the slowest of the AMs. And yeah, when we have 50-minute races and a pit window as well, people have to slot into some space on track and all this, that and the other. It's going to be certainly a lot of chaos, and we saw how easily it could happen with Albin Kjellberg having to cover his way quite a hefty number of AMs as well. If the man in 2nd place was a little bit closer to the back of him, if Neil Butler was just a little bit closer, that certainly could have spiced things up quite a bit. So expect more of the same, if not worse, when it comes to race 2.
Let's see how it goes in a few moments, but before we go any further, we'll check over the results from that one. Try to. Albin Kjellberg will take the victory there by a couple of seconds ahead of Neil Butler. Thomas Reiter will be third of Kenny Heremans, who just stayed out of trouble and got a great finish there, along with Callum Beeman. Chris Chatterton, same story really for 6th place. Championship leader Stuart Reynolds down in 7th on that occasion. Watch out for him in race 2. Argyros Yomitas was 8th place ahead of Kieran Smart and Jonas Dreyer, your top 10. Andy Miller just missed out on the reverse grid, and so did Thomas Dandridge. Harry Wills down in 13th. Not a great start to the season for him. Paul Busby, Louis Gardner and also Taylor Lane will fail to score points from this opening race of the day. In the Pro-Am category, it's going to be John Williams, who we'll hear from very soon, 3.5 seconds ahead of Felix Pearl. Didier Vlaminck in that 3rd place ahead of a real battle for 4th. Lucas Romano winning that one ahead of Liam Ahern, Edward Packer, Dean Timms and Sebastian Norgran. Michael Patterman was 9th, with Stefan Schuster getting race 2 pole from 10th. Alex Bomberg was 11th ahead of Simon Dodd, with Jeremy De Boyver also quite far down. Stuart Winers in 14th position, and Francois Pedro losing out on a load of positions on that last lap to finish 15th. Chauvel Haddad held off Juho Huitinen to the line, with Daniel Merchant rounding off the 18 cars, being one lap down, as was Chris Thacker in 19th place from the AM category. And finally, in Pro-Am I should say, this is the AM category. Louis Boubier winning by 7 seconds, the biggest winning margin out the three. Tony Norgren and Dirk Bouts join him on the podium, with James Slates and Connor Butting joining them in the top 5. Carl Pearce couldn't quite get there. Craig Shield 7th, ahead of Timo McKeown and Gus Franken. Jerome Reigns will get race 2 pole, ahead of Kurt Van Hoornacker, who lost 4 positions in 1 lap and finishes 11th. Glenn Humberstone will be 12th ahead of Jarmo Sastmoinen. Jürgen Knockout will be 14th, with Navarro De Boyver 15th. Jasper Sharks also finishing 1 lap down. He was 16th. Mark Bailey in that 17th position. He finishes 6 laps down, but will get points from that one, unlike Alistair Hatcher, who will not score any points from that race. And neither will Mark Oliver, who only completed 3 laps in that one as well. So that's it for race 1. Let's bring in the Pro-Am winner to join us for a little chat. John Williams, welcome along. Good to have you here. Good to see you back on the top step as well. I was saying just before this one, actually, that maybe you'd be a little bit disappointed with how Spa panned out in the end, considering how the back end of last season went. But you must be very pleased to get back on the right track here with a nice win at Hockenheim.
Hey guys, cheers for having me. Yeah, Spa race 1 was very difficult. I ended up being P15 and missed out on the reverse grid. I somehow got a P4 after the protests were all complete, so it's not too bad. It's a good start. It's a good start, and I'm looking to progress now.
I've got to say, in the pro race, we saw a lot of lapping with AMS going on, even in those 25 minutes. It's a pretty short circuit. It's not very wide. And so, do you expect traffic to be a particular problem throughout the 50-minute race with the amount of cars we still have?
No. If people stay to the line and just be predictable, just treat this like a multi-class race at that point, I think. Obviously, they've got their own race to race, but as long as they just stick to the line, if they're a lot slower than what the faster cars are, and then just let them through when it's safe, everything should be all right.
Well, let's hope everybody does do that, of course, over the next 50 minutes. John, well, good luck for that second race, of course, and congratulations on this first race win.
Cheers, guys. Cheers for having me.
Thanks very much. John Williams there, Pro-Am winner from race 1 at the Hockenheim. Well, that's just about it for race 1. Let's not forget, of course, that there is a drivers' draw. I believe it's every week between all the drivers for a chance to win a 45-minute driver coaching session with Absolute Sim Racing. And Dan Handover, who's there. And last week, Craig Shield was the driver who won that one. So that's every driver who's entered into the round, I believe. So there's about 54, 55 of them into it this week. And obviously we'll update you next week on who that is. But yeah, a reminder to all the drivers about that. For now, though, that is going to do us for race 1. Don't go anywhere, though. We've got the 50-minute race coming up very soon. Top 10 reversed in all 3 categories. It's not going to be one to miss. So make sure you stay with us. We'll be back in a few moments' time. Welcome back to Hockenheim for race 2 here this evening of the second round in the World Series League's GT3 Championship powered by IMB. It's season 4 and it's very good to be along once again. It's the reverse grid race, top 10 from race 1 switched around and made even more interesting than what we just saw in the first 25-minute race of this evening. My name's Ian Leary, I'm alongside Zach Sweeney for the race. And it's going to be a very interesting one, Zach. 50 minutes, a bit longer. The top 10 being reversed is the real talking point.
It is. It always is a recipe for things to be spiced up. We saw some great action last time out at Spa and as well at the pre-race at Le Mans as well. It really does open the door for some interesting opportunities. Now, of course, it's only the top 10. Last season, it was the full grid. But now only being the top 10 does mean sort of race 1 matters a little bit more because you still have to actively work to get that top 10. You can't just sit around, mingle and, get reverse grid pole. You have to still be inside the top 10. So should still be a straight shootout. Does make sort of Albin Kjellberg and Neil Butler's job slightly easier in carving their way through the field, but still a lot to talk about. And interestingly as well, at Hockenheim and some of the other shorter circuits that we go to this season, not so much that we saw at Le Mans or Spa, but we were talking about it just before we went to the break in terms of the traffic and things like that with the Pro-Ams and the AMs versus the pros coming through with this longer race, with this shorter circuit. Again, that is something else that is a little bit more spice in the pot.
I wonder if they're going to squash the classes together a bit more on this start. They're not going to do it all together, all 54 of them bearing down towards turn 1. That would be a bit dangerous, but I wonder whether they're going to just put the three classes ever so slightly closer together than what we saw in that opening one, because I did see the AM drivers getting underway almost a minute after the pro drivers, and when the circuit is only a minute and a half, a bit longer, it really doesn't take very much for the real top drivers to get to the back of the field. But either way, here are the reversed top 10s. Jonas Dreyer will be taking the field away entirely alongside Kieran Smart. Azurus Yomatash will be in third, ahead of Stuart Reynolds in fourth. Chris Charlton will be in that fifth place, ahead of Callum Beeman in sixth place. Then it will be Kenny Hermans in seventh, alongside Thomas Reiter. Neil Butler and Albin Kjellberg will round out the top 10 of the pro drivers. In Pro-Am, we are going to see Stefan Schuster in that 15th position overall. But first, in the order, then it's going to be Michael Patterman with Sebastian Norgran third. Then it'll be Dean Timms in fourth. Edward Packer rounding out the top five. Liam Ahern will be sixth. Lucas Romano and Dieter Vlaminck will be sharing row four, where Felix Pearl and John Williams will be rounding out the top 10 in Pro-Am. And then in Am, it's going to be Urains who's going to be on that first position alongside Gus Franken. Then Timo McKeon will be third alongside Craig Shield. Carl Pearce running out the top five. Connor Butting will be sixth place ahead of James Slate. Dirk Bout eighth, with Tony Norgran and Lewis Boubier rounding out the top 10. It's another very, very big grid indeed. We're down to 52, but that isn't going to exactly make it any quieter out there. We're going to see just how these guys who have found themselves right at the front get on.
Yeah, again, it's going to be a lot of chaos on these opening laps, of course, with people out of place and things like that. We saw in the opening stages of race number 1 as well, and, well, that was when everyone was meant to be in order from qualifying. So still a lot to be unravelled here for race 2, and we're about to get underway.
Certainly are. Pace car pulls in, and it's going to be Jonas Dreyer in control of the field, with Kieran Smart just alongside him, looking to try and get the jump. None of the drivers who started in second place last race could really get anywhere near the pole sitters, so let's see how they get on this time. Everybody ducking out of line, trying to go, and now they all fan out as one. Jonas Dreyer gets a car lap over the rest as they're 3 wide for second. Yomatas looking for that position on the inside of Kieran Smart as Stuart Reynolds tried to make it 3 wide on the very outside line. He decided that maybe wasn't the best idea. And Stefan Schuster is going to be in control of the Pro-Ams. He gets underway. It's a little bit closer, but either way, he's still got free rein into turn 1, and so have the top 3. There's contact. Oh, and off the road in a big way is Dean Timms again. Dean Timms off the road. He's down to 20th. He's made pretty big contact with the wall as well, so that may well be the end of it for him. As the Am drivers now get themselves underway, they're a little bit more squashed up than what we saw in race 1, but they're not formed up. Just look at those in the background, not paying attention at all as your own Reigns gets things underway. Gus Franken unchallenged as well for that second place. A bizarre start. Oh, and it's a disaster in the pro field.
Oh my word, you couldn't write this stuff at all. Harry Wills having an abysmal start to both race 1 and race 2. Going to take another look as to how it happened. Albin Kjellberg, our winner from race 1, darting now to the inside. This is all going to kick off, we're being told by our broadcast director. Albin Kjellberg just getting swamped by a number of cars, gets slammed into the back by the 94 Ferrari just in behind, and cars everywhere. Really, no one really knowing what to do. That poor Porsche there, the 22, just, you know, being pushed out of the way. Quite harsh actually from everyone around, but yeah, a big shame. But Sebastian Norgran leads the way in the Pro-Ams. He's closely followed by Michael Patterman, I should say. Side by side for Lucas Romano, who's making some steady progress around the outside of the Mobile 1 curve. That is certainly impressive. Gives him now the inside for the Sachs curve and trying to make his way up, and in fact that's him having to tuck back into place. But yeah, still a lot of moves being made up and down the field, and yeah, big shame for the pros.
Stefan Schuster has dropped from first position to 4th on this opening lap, as the Ams have gotten away to what is the cleanest start really, although it was the most strung out, and that does tend to be the case, that those that aren't formed up quite correctly or quite so tightly do get away with a little bit more through the opening lap, and you can see it here already starting to form out and settle down even at the end of lap 1 here for the Ams. Not unexpected because of the way they started, but in the pros it was just completely manic. We didn't even see, it was off camera, how Harry Wills managed to go around at the hairpin. Saw the big concertina effect going through on the inside line of that hairpin that ended up with about 4 cars getting connected with each other. Robin Kjellberg was one of those who was slowed up. Here is the view from Harry Wills. He's on the outside line. He's got the right idea here, but then I think a few of them on the outside tried to duck out of it, and it's that Porsche trying to duck around those guys stuck in the middle who ends up turning him around. Just one of those things for Harry Wills, really.
Yeah, just sort of that wrong place, wrong time. Everyone was bound to be unlucky. Bit of a move on the run now towards the Spitzke hairpin. That is De Boiver looking to the inside of Van Honacker. Pretty orthodox move, nothing, not too harshly contested either. and we cut our attention back because there is a lot of battles up and down. They run their way through the Mobile 1 curve once more. DJ Vlaming trying to make some progress and is at the moment 7th place overall in the Pro-Am category. A very, very quick driver is DJ Vlaming. And is still trying to get onto the back of Liam Ahern just in front of him. But yeah, Vlaming up 1 place, so still making some steady progress, it must be said. But back to the front, because Jonas Strayer and Kieran Smart are still quite close. But look at Stuart Reynolds. After his, unfortunate showing in race 1, he's, really bouncing back, and similar to Spa, trying to bounce back for race 2.
Remaining very close in the pro category right now. You can see the top 9 in your shot there. Then Kjellberg comes in the BMW and another couple in the background, so it's all very close in the pro field. In the midfield of the AMS it is close as well. That's what Peugeot has just got through on his countryman Daniel Merchant there for 13th place. You can see Peugeot was particularly unhappy at the end of last race with Alex Bomberg. We didn't see what happened between the two of them, but there was definitely an incident because Peugeot was furious about it as Lucas Romano makes his way down the inside more successfully this time on Stefan Schuster. That was very aggressive from everybody. There was definitely side-to-side contact towards the hairpin there, but Romano is through and looking to repeat his race 2 heroics from last week.
Yeah, he's if that is the case, he's going to try and do it on strategy. This time is now again on the run to the hairpin, turn number 6. You can see, just having a look to the right-hand side, was the car behind him, and unfortunately for him was tagged up, was slowed down by the BMW in front of him, and then unfortunately was rear-ended by the BMW behind him. And again, a similar thing of just wrong place, wrong time, putting the brakes on at the wrong point. This is side-by-side between Jeremy De Boyver and Felix Payal, I think, on the run now towards the Sachs curve. De Boyver on the outside. That's going to be tough because Payal has that inside line, but De Boyver with the outside momentum forced off again due to natural understeer. Felix Payal is able to hang on. In fact, that was actually Bomberg, and now Simon Dodd is trying to put some pressure on. Felix Payal is the Porsche just in front of them as well. But yeah, Jeremy De Boyver is trying to make some steady progress. But again, the outside of the Sachs curve, it's such a long corner and so banked on the inside that any move around the outside is almost doomed to fail.
Certainly looks like it. This is the midfield in AM, so the leaders are very much staying away from one another. Jerome Rains has gotten off to a nice start. As Franken trying to get away from the rest of the race. You can see they're already around turn 1 in this camera shot here. They're really quite a way away as Paul Busby is trying to watch in on Neil Butler, trying to make some progress. There's the Porsche in the background. Oh, contact! And Dandridge does well not to go steaming off at turn 8 entirely there. Paul Busby is right on the back of them now as well, but Neil Butler has finally managed to find his way through. This is the Mobile 1 curve. We could see the Porsche even having a go. That would be brave. So he's not going to attempt it on this occasion. Might even give it a go into the Sachs curve. He's going to stay behind by the looks of things, but what we have seen due to those opening incidents is most of the main contenders like Neil Butler, Paul Busby, Albin Kjellberg, they were all caught behind that. Now they're all miles behind.
Yeah, and it has definitely got a knock-on effect. Fortunately for them, they've still got a long time to try and recover. Of course, with all the pit stops, if I was them, probably taking an earlier pit stop to have maybe some clear air. Then again, they do run into the risk of running into the lower categories and things like that. But they have to try something different. What have they got to lose? Absolutely nothing. So they might as well, if it brings them back into contention, then fair enough. This is the fight at the moment. Again, for the sort of the tail end of the Pro-Ams, we've got Chris Thacker on the back of Merchant and Perdriel, and this train running all the way up, I think, all the way to the likes of the fringe of the top 10 with Bomberg there. But we go back again to the pros, because there is trains of cars all the way up and down. Wherever you look, there's probably going to be a couple of cars next to each other. This is Carl Pearce with Lewis Boubier not making the most progress. Of course, won in race 1, but he's only up a couple of places here for race 2. Well, I say that he's actually up 5 places and still going up. But Lewis Boubier, you would expect, would certainly be carving his way through the field a little bit more effectively than he is.
You would have expected that last week as well, but it turned out not to be the case for him. He was second in race 1 last week, so not quite the same position, but either way, he ended up way down at the end of race 2 after getting involved in an incident. Did score points at least, but he was way down, and it's put him way down in the standings as well, because this season, even more so than last season, more heavily weighted towards race 2 than it was. So your ability to get through the traffic like this is even more important than it was last season, arguably in 2 ways, not just because of the points, but also because of the amount of cars we have this season. I don't think we ever got near to 60 cars on a grid last season. Not that we had few numbers, but we did certainly have less than this. Been a very remarkable start to the season as Stefan Schuster is continuing to look in his mirrors more than looking forwards. John Williams stuck in this traffic right now. Said that traffic wasn't going to be a real problem. We'll see how much that comes true throughout the next 40 minutes.
Yeah, John Williams trying to make his way through. Here's Thomas Dandridge being sent by Paul Busby to the inside. That was certainly bold and brave. And now Albin Kjellberg is trying to work his way forward between the pair of them, of Paul Busby and Albin Kjellberg. They've got a lot of ground to make up. Are they going to do it mutually? Because Dandridge might actually launch the counter-attack for P8. Albin Kjellberg was expecting to follow the Porsche in front of him through, but now here goes Busby defensive. Dandridge to the outside. What's Kjellberg going to do? Probably going to break early, try and get the switch back on the pair of them. Thomas Dandridge a long way around. That's going to invite the door open for Albin Kjellberg, who isn't quite able to nip his nose to the inside, so Paul Busby hangs on for the time being. Back to the Pro-Ams because Didier Vlaming is just in behind Liam Ahern and Stefan Schuster, who, oh my word, gets forced all the way to the right-hand side of the circuit, onto the grass. There goes Stefan Schuster into the barrier. He takes Liam Ahern with him, bows back onto the racing line, a couple of cars have to duck and dive their way to avoid it, but Stefan Schuster very aggressive on the defence, and unfortunately for him, Liam Ahern was taken with him.
That was very, well, silly, really. Schuster, well, Ahern goes to the inside. Schuster doesn't really give him the room. All up towards that point it's okay, and now it gets less okay. There's a bit of contact there, and then there's even more as Ahern is trying to get on the tarmac. And Schuster is going to maintain that Ahern was trying to attack or pass him off the road. Both of them slam into the wall, though. I think Ahern gets caught in the wall, and Schuster spirals back onto the circuit, thankfully. Doesn't take anybody else with him, but that was all a bit unnecessary, really. Let's have a look at it from this angle. This is a better angle. So there's definitely a car length there for Ahern to get through. Is he alongside? He's definitely alongside before the... Well, it's a tight one. Schuster will argue that Ahern was trying to overtake him off the road there, and Tim Ahern will argue that Stefan Schuster wasn't really admiring his existence. Well, not admiring, but even acknowledging his existence there on the inside.
Yeah, I think they're just lucky that Stefan Schuster didn't run into any other cars on the race line again. This is Albin Kjellberg to the inside of Thomas Dandridge, and now going to try and follow Paul Busby to the likes of Limantas and Butler for the P6 and P7 sort of places. But you know, that very easily could have gone a lot worse if the cars behind Stefan Schuster and Liam Ahern were a lot closer. Because, yeah, he came straight back onto the race line into the braking zone. And once you get to that point, there's no avoiding it. So the fact that it was only a two-car incident definitely is probably the best they could have got in that very bad situation. But besides the point, let's not dwell too much on the past, because we've got a good fight heating up here for the AM, sorry, I should say, with Connor Botting in P4. He's got Timo McEwen just in front of him, and of course with Schill and Boubier up yet another place. This is the fight for overall for second place in the AM. This is the fight for overall P2 between Kieran Smart, Stuart Reynolds, and Chris Chatterton. So again, we're seeing 2, 3, 4 cars. We're very rarely seeing cars by themselves.
Yeah, absolutely, and we're not really seeing this lead battle fall away, really. Chris Chatterton's starting to lose some ground to the top 3 now, but Australia holding strong in the lead. I think it's mainly because Stuart Reynolds is applying the pressure to Kieran Smart here and not allowing Smart to put the pressure on him. But let's wait and see, because it's not a bad run at all out of turn 2 for Kieran Smart, and by the time they get down to the hairpin, it could be very tasty. And that was free wide into the Mobil 1 curve. You'd hardly ever see that, and for good reason as well. James Slates backs out of it, and you can just see Van Hoornacker gaining so much due to that. He was 1.8 seconds behind before. Now he's gained nearly a second in about 2 corners there. It just goes to show what happens when you are quite so wild in terms of the 3 wide. This is the leading fight though. 4 cars for the lead, and I feel it's going to remain like this because it's fairly difficult to overtake.
It is, unless you can get a really good run off of turn 3 and then that run through the parabolica and towards the Spitzker hairpin and utilise that slipstream, because then it's a pretty orthodox overtaking manoeuvre. But all the way through the second and third part of the circuit, there's it's pretty single file. There's quite hard to find a way through unless you're already side by side, like these two here between Simon Dodd and De Boiver in the Pro-Ams. You can see there Simon Dodd trying to hold firm. He's going to be on the outside for the Mercedes Arena section, probably actually arguably the best place to be if you have a clean run through. De Boiver back up the inside. Oh my word, who's that going off? That's Boubier. Oh my word, browning his way. He manages to jump his way over. I think that was Pierce there. Fortunately for them, wasn't collected in that. Luis Boubier somehow is continuing in this race, but have to take another look at that one, because I'm speechless again. We're gonna take a look. He's tucked up behind another car, but how did that go so very wrong?
Well, let's see. Well, that was all very weird. He all just ducked out of line there and slammed straight into the wall. And for the second week in a row, a nice race 1 has turned into a disaster in race 2 for Louis Bouvier once more. Oh, this is going to be quite sickening. Let's see. He's on the brake bit. So yeah, he ducks back into line. He has a look towards the inside, decides maybe I don't want to go for this. By the time he's back on the racing line, the guys in front are slamming on the brakes. He has to avoid, and while braking and turning, he goes straight into the wall, and that's going to be a long repair for him, although he's done well to get it back.
Yeah, I mean, fair play for that. I think that's going to be quite the cinematic shot to see in slow-mo and get some freeze frames of where he's directly over another car. But yeah, that's besides the point. I'm just confused as to how that went so wrong. It was obviously him moving under braking that really unsettled the car, but hey ho, that is, well, Hockenheim, it provides some interesting action to say the least. This is the fight amongst the pros between still Jonas Dreyer, Kieran Smart, Stuart Reynolds and Chris Chatterton. The 4 still very, very close indeed. More so a 3, but Chris Chatterton sort of hanging on in the background. Jonas Dreyer doing a fantastic job to hold firm out in front. This is Pedro looking to the inside through this left-hander. Merchant going to try and go the long way around, and Thacker sitting idle, trying to find the way through. As soon as the open gap comes, still side by side between the pair of them. Merchant keeping him honest on the inside, not quite got the run, and now to the outside goes Thacker of the Mobile 1 curve. Oh my word, that was very deep from Merchant, and very easily could have sent Pedro off, but he held his confidence, held firm, and into the Sachs curve. There goes Thacker, having a bit of a look, but again having to back off, and certainly proving your point that it can be quite difficult to overtake around here.
Certainly can. This is the AM battle, which is very much going on in the midfield, not so much up front. Iran Reigns has got a 3-second lead right now. Gus Franken on his own as well in second. Main contenders struggling in the pack. There's Reigns. And can you see any cars around him? Well, no. There's a good reason for that. He's got a nice lead. And there is Gus Franken, second place for now, trying to chase, but can't really for the moment. Even McKeown and Connor Botting not too far or not too close together at this stage. Craig Shill, a little bit of distance between him and them. And then you get to the midfield, and then you get to the fighting in the AM category. So quarter of an hour gone there, and the top positions seem to be settled. But let's not forget that they're not too far, or the supposed better drivers are down towards the back there. So the story very much not over, and it's not over here either. Battle for the lead still very much going on. Jonas Dreyer still very much leading, but the stronger drivers, the likes of Butler, who's just trying to get through. Neil Butler is trying to get through into the top 5 right now. Albin Kjellberg is 8th. Paul Busby's not too far away. The leaders are coming.
Albin Kjellberg is only a few seconds back off the race lead. This is still Pedro and Thacker fighting out. Merchant actually managed to get in front. So Pedro falling back a little bit, and through the right-hander, Thacker sent sideways, managed to hold it. Here comes Fernando Torres through, up into 13th. And that is certainly a shame. For Thacker to be sent round back again to the front, because Kieran Smart does look close to Jonas Dreyer. This is what happened a little while ago. You can see Jonas Dreyer leading the way. Kieran Smart looking to the right hand side, goes for the move for the race lead. Is he able to get it stopped? The answer to that is definitely not. Goes in way too deep, overshoots himself off the circuit. Luckily manages to hang on for second place though, and cheekily tries to hang it around the outside to retain in first place. But Kieran Smart not making so many smart decisions so far in this race. Still doing quite well to hold on to second, and as you say, definitely not over until it's over. Absolutely. It was quite smart. Well, I don't want to say smart because it is technically cheating, but also it's a bad pun. Basically held on to second by avoiding the curb there and running out onto the tarmac. If there was grass there, he certainly wouldn't have done that, and certainly wouldn't have held on to second either. But either way, he's managed it. He's taken the off track for it, and he can't take too many of those. Let's not forget, 25 until you get a drive through in these 50-minute races. Not that many at a circuit like the Hockenheim, where you do have to think about it quite a lot. There's quite a lot of places where you can go wide and get damage. Sorry, getting off track, as there might be some damage down here. Certainly is for Stefan Schuster. To see his car with no front end. Also got Kurt van Hoornacker in the pit lane with Louis Bouvier right now, both with damage, I would imagine, at this early stage. Carl Pearce makes his way around the outside of James Slates, who won't give up. Goes down the inside into the hairpin and holds on to 6th place. Well, actually, but I believe that's him going through into 6th, actually, of Carl Pearce, who was previously in that position. He's been around there anyway, as the leaders overall
are coming up on one of the back markers right now. One of the AM drivers in the field. This could make Jonas Dreher's job even more difficult. Kieran Smart has been getting closer and closer to him with every lap, and now is his chance to strike. Maybe he's very close and won't be able to go for it there. It looked like he, instead of not being able to, just didn't want to go down the inside of the hairpin there.
Yeah, interesting one indeed. As we see the first lap traffic coming through, there's Harriman getting involved, I think, with one of them, and that is the problem. I think that traffic can pose, unfortunately for Harriman. It wasn't great, but again, fortunately for him, it was only door-to-door contact, so not the worst thing in the world. But yeah, interesting that Kieran Smart didn't want to go for that move. We're going to take another look as to what happened to Kenny Harriman. Now you can see flashing the lights trying to get the back marker to move out the way, moves to the right a little bit. Harriman has committed on the brakes, and oh my word, that was perilously close to the 41 Porsche just in front of him there of just going to check who that is. That's Neil Butler, the 41 in 5th place at the moment, just in front of him. But again, you can just tell how the desperation to get through the lap traffic can very easily fill up with disaster.
I think Mark Bailey was stopped on the left-hand side coming out the hairpin as well. There was certainly a BMW on the exit of that corner there for no apparent reason, really. That was a bit of a weird one. Still getting very close at the front of the overall lead now as we approach half distance. It was Mark Bailey. I don't know whether he wasn't just mining his way out of traffic. He was clearly got damage here as well because he's gone back to the pit lane. So something has gone on there. Unfortunately, that has resulted in a pit stop as Kieran Smart hits Jonas Dreher now as well. Stuart Reynolds might be able to take advantage of this. He's going to have the shorter line around Parabolica and the slipstream as well. He's going to have Kieran Smart for company. Is he going to try and take the lead here as well, Reynolds? He is. He ducks around one inside of the other, and he might well have the lead here. Late on the brakes. Oh, and it's very close. He shoves his teammate out wide, who barely keeps it going along the curb. And here comes Kieran Smart as well to try and make his way through. He won't do on that occasion. Very smart driving by the two Mercedes as Kieran Smart goes for first and loses second.
Beautiful stuff from Stuart Reynolds, though, to be able to do that. Of course, the inside move on his teammate from Jonas Dreher, something we saw at Spa actually, between these two. I think they worked quite well together, and Stuart Reynolds to do that and get both places was a phenomenal job, and Kieran Smart unfortunately was unable to capitalise on it. But now Jonas Dreher's got the tough ass because Kieran Smart already looking on both the offensive and the defensive, having to look backwards at Chris Chatterton and Neil Butler, but also forwards at trying to get up in a second place. But you can see the pace that Stuart Reynolds is already demonstrating to get the gap and bridge the gap away from his teammate of Jonas Dreher. You can see a good couple of car links between the two teammates, and maybe that's the strategy Jonas Dreher used to sort of be a roadblock for Stuart Reynolds to try and get away. And Kieran Smart definitely having a really, really tough time of finding a way through. His best chance is all the way down in the Spitzker hairpin at turn 6, but each time he tries and each time he certainly fails.
Does Smart now on the back of Dreher, and you get the feeling that Stuart Reynolds may well just have free rein to get away with this one right now. Dreher is blocking anything and everything behind. Packer is in from 3rd place in Pro-Am, by the way. We saw a great, that's Edward Packer. We saw Lucas Romano employ a similar strategy towards this point in race 2 at Spa, and it got him the race win. Edward Packer was clearly taking notes, and he's pitted early there. Although it looks like an early pit stop for anybody, he is going to, well, he's not going to get anywhere near your own range because he's got 5 seconds over Franken in the lead there. Neil Butler tries to get through onto a provisional podium position here as well, as he's stood me into 4th place at least. Around the outside of Chris Chatterton at turn 8, that's a very impressive move. Harrimans won't be able to follow him through, but Neil Butler at least is up to 4th.
Yeah, not too bad at all. And again, it's that thing of when you're in a pack, being able to just pick your moments right, feel the space when it comes, and just try and judge it by ear, really, because it's always going to change when you're in a pack. You know, things are going to be different race by race, whatever experience you're in, and you just have to use your past experiences to try and negotiate your way through the pack as best as possible. But it can certainly be a lot of chaos, especially if one driver goes for a move. It does sort of cause a chain reaction a bit further back. This is a fight amongst those in the AMs. This is the fight as Timo McEwen tries to go the long way around of Connor Botting for 3rd place. You can see that a bit sideways from the Mercedes, taps into the side of the BMW. That is very, very unfortunate. Flash the lights, of course, but Craig Schill wants to get inside into a bit of action. His Timo McEwen is under a bit of pressure, but yeah, Connor Botting hanging on to P3 for the time being. There is a big old train. Here's Craig Schill now trying to hold firm on the inside. He's got Kyle Pearce to his outside and Timo McEwen as well. There's just so many cars, so much to dissect. Just about able to hang on does Kyle Pearce and Craig Schill in 6th place. There's Dirk Bouts looking to the inside of James Slate into the Mobil 1 curve. A big old fight here for the podium places in AM.
Yeah, and that was Edward Packer, by the way, in the BMW involved in that, and that's the problem with the strategy at this circuit compared to Spa. You do get slowed up by those cars a lot more, as Jansen, for the second lap in a row, is coming under fire for a position. This time it's 5th place, and it's Kenny Hermans back down his inside at turn 8, very nearly. Won't be able to do it on that occasion, has to stay behind. There's someone smoking on the way towards turn 1, that's weird. Unless it's my eyes. But yeah, something going on there. Certainly, Edward Packer, though, very much in... No, someone's having a problem there. I don't know what that's all about, but somebody's trying to make sure we can't see what's going on. Anyway, battle for 4th, this is in AM. We might be able to... this is why Louis Boubier has tried to continue, but he's made his life even worse, actually, by continuing on.
That is a very stricken Audi, and fair play for trying to carry on, but again, it's another race too, unfortunately, ending not in the best of ways for Louis Boubier, which is a little bit unfortunate for sure, but we cut our attention back to the AMS because still the fight rages on. It's still quite close actually amongst the pros for what is going to be 1st place, because Jonas Dreyer, Kieran Smart and Neil Butler is still very, very close indeed, but we are at the moment focusing on this fight between Kyle Pearce, the 26 Audi, and Timo McEwen in the Mercedes just in front of him. Looking to the inside goes Pearce, but again, not quite close enough. More a move to just scare rather than to actually go for that move, and that's sort of what you have to do around Hockenheim. You have to bait those moves. You have to put your opponent under a bit of pressure. This is the fight. We have to cut our attention back to the pros because otherwise we'll miss it. And there's just so much to look through, and yeah, a lot of fights really. But again, when it comes to Hockenheim, it really is a strategical game when it comes to making any move.
Stuart Reynolds not really been able to get away as much as I thought he might be able to here. He's coming under fire once again from Dreyer. Kieran Smart there. So's Neil Butler, who really is the big threat for this race. For whatever reason, Paul Busby and Albin Kjellberg struggling to make progress in the back of the pack. I wonder if they're just saving something and they're going to have a really short pit stop and a loud ending, but let's wait and see as we go down towards the sack curve. On board now with the Porsche of Neil Butler. Does he want to get himself out of this traffic just over the halfway stage, or does he want to battle his way through it, go into the penultimate turn and find out, at least for this lap? Round he goes, a little bit wide from Smart, and there's going to be a run here for Butler, but very rarely do you see a move down towards turn number 1, far too fast of a corner. You can even see there Butler lifting off on the way in. He's going to struggle to get through by the looks of things with this gap now. He needs a monumental turn 2, and I don't think he's going to have one.
It's going to be very, very tricky indeed, unless you can really hit the apex well, get the drive off the corner, but not quite good enough for Neil Butler, and with Kieran Smart actually benefiting off the slipstream as well from Jonas Dreyer, just sort of negates it. So unless it's an almighty send from the Porsche under brakes, which isn't probably going to be the best of ideas, in all honesty, he won't be able to find his way through. So still going to be single file for the 4 of them, 1, 2, 3 and 4 as they were. Chris Chatterton has fallen off a little bit. He's going to be overtaken by Harriman as they go through and towards the split scare hairpin once more, and Harriman is making some good progress.
And he is. The top 5 very close together indeed in the top 4 in the pro category, coming up on some lap traffic now though, and this might be the cue for some to come in the pro category, because we are getting towards the back of the AMS now. Oh, that was a big hit on the curb from Jonas Dreyer. Doesn't seem to have affected him too much. Smart wasn't able to go through there at all, and Stuart Reynolds goes wildly off at the Mobil 1 curve there as well, so that was all a bit dusty. So now, what are we going to see in terms of pit stops at all? Because we are very much into AM traffic here for the pros. Nobody going to take the initiative on this occasion. It's so baffling to me that in this series, week after week, even season after season now, we almost never see early pit stops.
Yeah, that is Albin Kjellberg getting a little bit friendly going into the Mobil 1 curve. He is having a really tough time in race 2. He made amends for Spa in race 1, taking the win, of course, in fairly dominant fashion, it must be said, but unfortunately for him, has been caught up in his own fair share of incidents. That's the Porsche. The wall there does sort of stick out a bit. It is easy to get caught out, but unfortunately for Albin Kjellberg, he was not expecting the Porsche to cut across the track quite like that. He at the moment is in 12th place, but again, after pit stops and things like that, we'll have to see where it actually is. Jonas Dreyer falling off a little bit by his teammates, so Kieran Smart could eye up the move now for second place. A bit of AM traffic to contend with. Kieran Smart going to be tucking in behind, going through. Neil Butler also. They're going to, I think, work together to negotiate this traffic, but definitely this is a good sign to come in, because at this point you're just losing time with every lap.
A great sign to come in, and I feel like the race has been going on long enough now for them to come out ahead of the Pro-Ams, or at least ahead of most of them. Let's see. You can see, thankfully for the pros, that the AM drivers are spread out a bit more than they were in the first race, where they stayed really close together. They slowed each other down so much that they got caught before the 25 minutes was up. This time around they've spread out a bit more and they've gone a bit faster as well as starting a bit closer to the pro cars. So it's not so much of a problem, but either way it is going to be at some point throughout the day. As you can see, not much has changed in the AM category for the last few moments. Another lap goes by and another trip past the pit lane for most of these pro drivers. Another AM car dispatched off. This is going to become a real annoyance to all of them over the next few moments. We've got Dirk Bounce coming up next, Jonas Estemoinen after that, and Jürgen Knockhart. And then there's a bit of a gap, but they've got to negotiate 3 AM drivers, and then as soon as they've done that, they'll be in not long after. The fuel is going to be running out soon as we hit the near halfway mark.
Yeah, they've got to come in at some point because of the mandatory rule, but also with the fuel, they can't just run it all the way to the end. So they are going to have to come into the pit lane at some point. They can't just keep on going forever, as much as they probably would like to, and as much as we'd like them to, actually, because the pit lane does separate them just a little bit, and with how close they are. There's Neil Butler having a bit of a look for third place. Oh my word, that's a big send, just about able to get that stopped. Oh my word, up into third place. Kieran Smart saw him coming. Jonas Dreyer definitely was going to be scared that he was going to get tagged around by the Porsche, but he played that to perfection. Got that car stopped right on the apex, right up close to the rear bumper of that Mercedes in front of him, and that was a brilliant move up into third place for Neil Butler, and using that pace very wisely indeed.
Great pass from Neil Butler, broke at exactly the right moment, got as close to Jonas Dreyer as possible without hitting him, and got through into third. We'll see if he tries to take 2 in 1 lap here. Down the inside at the Sachs curve, that would have been brave. So he hasn't gone for it. But Jonas Dreyer will certainly see what's coming. He will have seen that move in the mirrors, and he will know what Neil Butler wants to do, and so he's going to pit before it happens. Stuart Reynolds also comes in as well. So the 2 leaders, the top 2 from this race into the pit lane. That was quite conservative on the way in from Reynolds. Both Butler and Smart can maybe go a little bit deeper in. Maybe take a little bit of a shorter pit stop, then maybe we'll have a new leader on the other side of this pit stop phase. But finally it has happened, and now the race is going to be all over the place for the next 5-10 minutes or so. No real AM drivers have come in just yet. We have of course seen quite a few from Pro-Am so far making their way into the pit lane. The first of them, Didier Vlamink, who's managed to find his way not only in front of Edward Packer but also Simon Dodd. It looks like Edward Packer's early pit stop strategy is not going to work out, because his pit stop was 14 seconds longer than it should have been, 14-15 seconds longer, and he's already behind Vlamink, so it looks like that early stop is not going to pay off this time.
Yeah, and that is probably why we don't see it, because of course you do have to take a slightly longer stop, and that is sort of the payoff that you have, and of course you're running on a heavier car for longer throughout the duration of the race. So yeah, that's definitely a good explanation as to why sometimes we see it and it works, sometimes we see it and it doesn't. Most of the time it doesn't. But this is the fight for P4 at the moment. Norgran was doing a really good job holding firm for the lead. That is a question we're getting posed in our ears, but yeah, Norgran at the moment is only 5th place on the back of Carl Pierce for P4. But yeah, strange how he's lost a bit of time. Maybe some pit stops haven't funneled their way up properly yet, yeah, he's still only P5, but David Christie is talking absolute waffle. You can't hear him, but we can, and we're going to judge him for it, and we're going to throw him under the bus for it. Tony Norgran, though, is still on the back of Carl Pierce and still wanting to get himself up in a 4th place. But again, talking about the pros and the pro-ams and everything when it comes to pit strategy, as you say, it's going to be sort of all over the place for the next few minutes, and when it does finally funnel itself out, there could be a couple of surprises.
We've worked out the relation between the De Boivers. Not sure what the relation is between Sebastian and Tony Norgran. I'm guessing there is one. But yeah, we're yet to figure it out. Feel free to tell us, anyone. Yeah, Sebastian Norgran leading in Pro-Am right now. As we go back to the leaders in the overall. Bill Butler now leading overall, of course, because we have seen those pit stops for Stuart Reynolds and Jonas Dreyer. Seen, well, Paul Busby in as well. I mean, Kjellberg, has he been in? It looks like he has. He has indeed. He's ended up ahead of Busby. And he's not far behind Dreyer, not far behind Reynolds either. So all of a sudden, after a very quiet first half of the race, Albin Kjellberg and Paul Busby are going to be right there at the end.
This is going to be feisty. I'm looking forward to seeing how this one sort of plays itself out as Neil Butler negotiates the back end of the AM traffic, and also Kieran Smart has to negotiate through. And yeah, Albin Kjellberg coming in a couple of laps earlier than the likes of Stuart Reynolds and Jonas Dreyer on lap 16. Paul Busby also on to lap 20, but both of them using their pace really, really well. Both of them caught up very early on in this race, but haven't looked backwards since. They've pushed forward, stayed determined, and could still definitely be a good surprise in this race because, well, maybe for second place, Stuart Reynolds does seem quite firm when it comes to sort of consolidating P1, but Albin Kjellberg for a podium, that doesn't sound all too outlandish.
We've not got many drivers out the race, actually, but a lot of them in AM have stopped it so far. We do have Stuart Reynolds out the race. Liam Ahern may well be as well. I know these are not all AMs, but I'm just naming everybody. Stefan Schuster probably out the race, so is Mark Bailey, who definitely is. Bruce Booby and Thomas Dandridge now over 10 minutes in their repairs, so there's plenty of long stops happening down the order. And they're all in arrears to Jeroen Reins, who is running away with this race right now. Wasn't particularly impressive throughout the Spa round or even the first round here either, the first race here either. 9th place in the standings after 3 races this season. But this is going to do wonders for him over the next few weeks if he can take a win here. 15 minutes to go, and Stuart Reynolds is still the first of those to have pitted. Then it's Dreyer, Kjellberg, Busby, and Chris Chatterton has ended up behind them all. So is Kenny Hermans as Kjellberg gets through on Jonas Dreyer for what will become probably second place in this race, unless Neil Butler can do anything about that. The pro race is very much staying together, arguably more staying closer together than it did at Spa, which is bizarre.
Yeah, this is, final 15 minutes of the race. It's really going to start, starting to heat up. And yeah, wow, Albin Kjellberg has driven such a great race. Butler and Smart still carrying on somehow. And I am baffled as to how, because this is really, really long into this race. Of course, when they do eventually come in, they're going to have a really short stop. Mantis, Reiter and Callum Beeman all into the pit lane. All of them still very late pitters. And it is bizarre as to the range that we're getting in terms of the pit window, because right now we're on to lap 22. Albin Kjellberg came on lap 16, so that is a good, good chunk pit window. These guys to come into, but yeah, Neil Butler and Kieran Smart, they're not exactly dropping down on pace either. On that last lap, Neil Butler set his personal best of the race, which is the 35.9. The car is as light as it's been, but you'd have thought he'd been saving a bit of fuel to go this far. He would have had to drop off just a little bit, and this is Harry Wills again having a pretty misfortunate race.
Yeah, it is quite a long way to go, but then again, you've got to remember that Kjellberg didn't exactly run his tank dry when he came in at the end of lap 16. He just thought that was the best idea. He was just going to get on the grass on the way in here. Oh no, he's not. He's just gone too deep in to the Sats curve. I know there's banking there, but you can't carry all the speed you want. And so Wills drops to 13. It really has been a slow start to the season for Harry Wills, compared to what we know he can do. As Johan Chas looks to the outside line of Kenny Hermans, and it looks like Thomas Reiter is going to go straight through back into the top 10 as a result. That was very opportunistic driving from him. The 4 of them have ended up in arrears to the real leaders, like of Stuart Reynolds, who I believe is going to be the race leader after all of this. That's a lot of smoke. What's going on here for Didier Vlaming? Looking down the inside of the penultimate corner. Oh dear, and that was all very awkward. I think that Audi wanted to come into the pit lane, and he was looking up the inside. It all went wrong from there.
It is one of those awkward pit lanes here at the Hockenheimring, especially similar, well, actually, to the Red Bull Ring, which I think we go to in a week's time. It is an awkward one because the natural line does take you away from the pit entry, and you want to bring it back in. Of course, the Red Bull Ring has provisions. You going into turn 9, you stay on the right, but Hockenheim doesn't have any of that. It's just sort of try and stay tight and not get involved in anything, but can make things difficult. There's Stuart Reynolds, Neil Butler now leaving the pit lane. It is going to be quite close. Stuart Reynolds does get ahead, but Neil Butler is very, very close, and with that traffic just in front of him, could close the gap. Kieran Smart comes out still in third place. Albin Kjellberg about, not really close behind him, actually about half a second back. So this is really hitting up. If Stuart Reynolds doesn't get away from Neil Butler and they start to fight, we could very well easily have Stuart Reynolds, Neil Butler, Kieran Smart and Albin Kjellberg all in the chance for a race victory.
He's staying very, very close indeed, and Stuart Reynolds might start to view this as a missed opportunity because he started well in front of the likes of Butler and Kjellberg, who are now fighting their way inside the top 5. Paul Busby looking for a move at the hairpin as well. He's down the inside of Jonas Dreyer, and he's got it done in the background. The Mercedes just gets pushed out wide with Busby through into the top 5 once again. An important pass for him. But yeah, if Reynolds and Butler start to fight, then there really is going to be a big group hit. We'll even include these guys by the end. Yomantas is back into the top 10 again, as Tony Norgran is now in from the lead of the AMS. It would be a big surprise to see anybody apart from, well, where is he? Jeroen Reigns is still in the pit lane. What's going on here for Jeroen Reigns? Because all of a sudden, he's been in pit lane for 2 minutes. Previous race leader by nearly 10 seconds has been in the pit lane for 2 minutes. And now all of a sudden we have a new leader. Connor Botting is now taking the lead of the AM category. There's a big change there as Reigns finally gets going, more than a lap down.
Oh my word, the pit lane throwing even more surprises at us, and yeah, that is again unfortunate for Jeroen Reigns, who really hasn't had the best races. Here's Connor Botting, who currently leads the way, and he's doing a pretty good job in the AMS as well. But of course, he's going to be trying to be chased down, and with some good contenders like Louis Boubier actually out of the race, it is a perfect opportunity for him to step up. He's about 1.5 seconds clear of Gus Franken in second place, and with Tony Norgran, not to be confused with Sebastian Norgran, who is currently leading the way in the Pro-Ams in P3. He could actually break away. There they are, our race leaders. Stuart Reynolds under a world of pressure. Neil Butler now going to dummy to the inside, late on the brakes, not quite late enough, but definitely Reynolds is going to be under quite a bit of pressure with only 10 minutes left to go. That's probably going to be 7-8 laps left to go in this race. Not long left at all, and it is certainly all heating up.
These guys won't be fighting for top 5 places today, you wouldn't imagine, even with 10 minutes to go. Too involved in their own fight. As you can see, some of the AM fights now really involved with the rest of them. That's Craig Shield just in front of Glenn Humberstone. You can see in the two similar looking Porsches here. I say similar, they're pretty much identical. And here's the Pro-Am fights as well. The last spot inside the top 5. XPL looking up the inside there, not able to do it. It looks like it's going to be yet another podium here for Lucas Romano, by the looks of things. I'll say yet another one. He only got 4th last time. It still wasn't bad. Lost a bit of his championship lead, but not very much at all. As we go back to the race lead, just over 9 minutes to go right now. About 6 laps left in this race, and Stuart Reynolds has got, well, it's going to feel like 60 laps to him.
Yeah, honestly, when the clock is so close to the finish line, but yet so far, time just ticks so slow. You go into every corner stressing, trying to defend, and it is just such a stressful ordeal that it's hard to deal with. And it's something you either thrive under or you crack completely break down under. So Neil Butler is doing his absolute best to try and break down the defensive walls that Stuart Reynolds is putting up. Not going to put up much of a fight, going to squeeze him to the extremities of the right-hand side. Here comes Neil Butler now to the inside of turn 6. The split-scare hairpin is going to be crucial that he gets this stopped, gives the Mercedes the squeeze. Stuart Reynolds tries to tuck in for the switchback. Neil Butler takes the race lead, and Stuart Reynolds now is the one in behind. He's the one with all the work to do if he wants to win this race.
That was so clever from Neil Butler there to position his car in a way that Stuart Reynolds couldn't do the cutback and come back at him on the run down here towards turn 8, where he might well have done if Butler hadn't been so smart to defend in the way that he did. Very, very impressive. He's good value now for his race lead with only 8 minutes to go in this race at Hockenheim. It's not over for the win either in AM, as Connor Botting is coming under pressure from Gus Franken, who's been second for most of this race, and Tony Norgran as well. Are we going to see a double Norgran victory? If that's ever happened in the World Series Leagues before, and we could well be on the verge of our first. Here are these three It's the leading fight in the AM category. Gus Franken half defending towards turn 2. Half attacking is Tony Norgran. He tucks back in, looking for maybe a move at the hairpin, which will be a bit more sensible, but it's not a good run through there. He's going to end up in the grass. Oh, he ends up in the grass. He loses a load of time, and he might have thrown away his chances at the win.
He might well have done. He's going to be betting and hoping that Connor Botting and Gus Franken come to blows or something or other, because, yeah, Tony Norgran has lost a ton of time to those in front. And, again, time is not on his side. He's only got now 7 minutes of this race remaining. Not great for him at all. This is the fight now between Callum Beeman and Yamantas. To the inside goes the now 10th place man of Callum Beeman up. And inside the top 10, Yamantas, though, is going to try and fight back at him. They haven't got too big of a gap up to the likes of Thomas Reiter either, so could still fight for that one. But you can see Tony Norgran in that mistake, that 2 seconds lost to the likes of Connor Botting and Gus Franken. So very easily has now turned into a 2-horse race for the fight for the AM win.
Certainly has. And Norgran will be kicking himself and might even fall off the podium at this rate. Franken has been second for pretty much this entire race so far. Now is his chance to try and win this one. Connor Botting has come from around the top 5 kind of area to try and win this one. So it's not been unimpressive from him either. Both of these two will be looking for a win at this stage. Botting 5th place in the standings coming into this one. Gus Franken a little bit further down in 10th, particularly after his first weekend at Spa. So it's between those two by the looks of things. Battle for 4th still on as well. This is Dirk Bounce trying to take 4th away from Carl Pearce, with James Slates in 6th place and a search for a top 5 himself. Is Botting, has he got a good enough run through Parabolica and towards the hairpin to hold on here? Looks like he has this time, but this is going to be one that could go to the line.
Yeah, it's they're going to probably, you know, swap places a couple of times, or at least, you know, have a couple of goes before it gets to the line. That you can't see these two getting separated at all, because Connor Botting, you know, he hasn't got the breakaway pace. Gus Franken certainly is not going to let him get away at all as they run in towards the Mercedes arena. You can see Gus Franken a bit more committed, trying to close the gap, trying to just close that bridge really, and make it easier when it comes to that run through the Parabolica and towards the hairpin, because that realistically is going to be his best chance. We've seen time and time again, maybe another series where people send moves to the Sachs curve and run side by side through the final sector when it comes to the race lead. Certainly can happen, but you do not want to bet on that happening. You want to get it done as easily as possible, especially when, you know, you might not get another chance, especially, you know, when it can all go so wrong so easily. But if it has to come to that, if you have to go for that send, if you want a race win, you know, for the likes of Connor Botting and Gus Franken, it's going to mean you know, the world to them to be able to take the victory. So it's definitely going to start to heat up. The tensions are going to be as high as possible. The adrenaline is going to be pumping and coursing through their veins right now. And yeah, it's going to be very interesting. Of course, don't forget that fight for the pros as well, and still some fights to be decided amongst the pro-ams. And yeah, this is a very chaotic end to this race.
That might well have been an accident there between those two. That Porsche was way too late on the brakes. And, well, I thought there was going to be contact, but clearly not, because nobody's changed places there. So it looks like they got away with that somehow. Wow, how did Felix Peel slow down in time? That was amazing. But somehow De Boyver avoids that, and Peel avoids a penalty likely as well for braking too late. But there we are. Chris Chatterton is holding on to 7th place right now and doing well. Callum Beeman has been shot out the back of this group as well after previously being with them. There he is, just in the background. Here is that group again. Pale clearly strong enough to maybe have a look at top 5 right now, but he's not really been able to get anywhere near, other than of course that time at turn 8. That's too wide, and that'll be an off track for Pale there. Dodd taking the proper line and will lose a bit of time as a result. Pale able to use it to get a run to the outside line at turn 2. He's going to switch back and not really take advantage of it, but a straighter exit, a nicer run, and there might be a move here at the hairpin.
You might well believe so, because we've seen before how strong that Porsche can be on the brakes. Maybe we haven't quite seen it at the hands of Felix Payal, but he certainly seems brave. De Boyver going to the right-hand side to defend. Simon Dodd just trying to pick his way through as best as possible. Payal commits to the outside. Oh, there's contact! And Payal is sent off. Oh, my word. Coercing into the runoff area. Now Simon Dodd is going to eye up the move on Jeremy De Boyver, but with them both trying to squeeze each other, trying to use all the track that they possibly can, not trying to let any advantage slip the way of the other driver. those things are bound to happen, but you have to say to come together in a straight line is definitely a little bit embarrassing. And when it comes to a fight for the top 5 as well, not particularly great. This is Kieran Smart. He's got Albin Kjellberg for company. So I did say a little earlier on, Albin Kjellberg for a podium definitely is not outlandish whatsoever. And with each lap, it definitely looks quite likely. But this is that incident again, and I'm still quite baffled.
I think Felix Pearl is in the right. The angle we had, this angle shows it best. Look at the lines in the road. Felix Pearl is basically straddling one of them down. I know he's not on the racing line. I know that the BMW is trying to get to the racing line, but you can only do that when it's free and not when there's a car alongside you. So I actually wouldn't pin the blame on Felix Pearl there at all. But I'm sure somebody has a different opinion of the meet. That is close, though. Albin Kjellberg trying to regain third place. Not sure how he lost it, but he has done. And Kieran Smart is trying to hold on to it right now. The bottom step of the podium. As they're on the penultimate lap, he goes wide. Kjellberg goes off as a result. That was rude from Smart, and Kjellberg is going to give him a taste of his own medicine here, possibly. Let's see, he's going to be respectful on the exit of that one, in fact. And towards 11 they go. This should be the move now for Kjellberg to get through. Oh, there's contact. Well, that was a bit questionable, and Smart's not happy about it, but Smart did push Kjellberg off at this corner, so who knows?
You give it, you got to take it. As much as that is, it's just how racing goes. If, as a racer, if you get pushed off, you're naturally going to give the other guy a bit of an elbows out. But into the Mobil 1 curve on the outside, as much as you'd like to think it's going to work on the outside, chances are it's really not. It's probably more sensible just to come in. But Albin Kjellberg into the pit lane, was that graphic correct there? Not entirely sure. Maybe he picked up some damage, but when it's this close to the end, surely not into the pit lane. No, it could be a drive-through. Maybe incident limit being reached with contact. That could be it. You don't get many, and that is going to be delight to the sight of Kieran Smart. But Albin Kjellberg, an anticlimactic again to what has been a remarkable race so far.
Still, he's yet to get this season really going. And that is such a shame for Kjellberg, because his last off-track there especially wasn't even his fault. But then again, you could argue that he shouldn't have been that close to the incident limit anyway, but who knows? It's a very unfortunate one for Kjellberg, as we are on the final lap now for the overall leaders, not for these AMs. They aren't going to get to the line after the time has elapsed, but they've got to wait for the overall leader to finish yet. So Connor Botting is going to have to do one more and hold off from Gus Franken and Tony Norgran, who's back again. So this fight will be one that rages on right to the line, but as elapsed now, in the final sector is Neil Butler in the lead of the overall race. There he is. He's just coming towards the Sats curve right now. Doesn't really want to pass this damaged Ferrari, but he might have to. Stuart Reynolds is not all that far behind him at the moment. You can see through the final couple of corners, it's going to come Neil Butler. After a very nice start to the season, he's going to continue it with a race 2 victory here at Hockenheim. Neil Butler wins here ahead of Stuart Reynolds. Kieran Smart will round off your podium with Jonas Dreyer and Chris Chatterton, your top 5. Further behind, it's going to be Sebastian Norgran, who's going to win the race in Pro-Am. He will hold off championship leader Lucas Romano, who really was on a charge towards the end of that one. Michael Patterman looks like he might just about hold out for a podium, but let's see whether John Williams can get anywhere near him. There's Norgran in the background. Williams is challenging Patterman, but he won't get there for third quite in time. The battle for the lead in AM looks like it's been settled, as Tony Norgran has gotten through on Gus Franken for second. It looks like that's given Connor Botting the space to just get this one home for the win.
Yeah, definitely so. Tony Norgran and Gus Franken probably fighting a little bit too hard over second, and as you say, Connor Botting is going to love that, just be able to get himself in front. But he's still got, a good third of the lap left to go. Still got to bring it home. No mistakes from here on in. He's done a phenomenal job all race long, and should, with only now 4 corners left in this race left to go, he shouldn't really have too much trouble. Tony Norgran going to give it his all just in case. Same too with Gus Franken, but Connor Botting through the fast couple of corners, and yeah, he's done a great job to take a win of this season. All in front of him as well. A bit of last lap chaos.
Yeah, I don't know what that was all about, and I don't think those two cars were even battling there, but anyway, Connor Botting not going to be too pleased about it, but he is going to get over the line just in time. Such a close margin between himself and the rest. Botting, Norgran, Franken, Pierce, Boat, Slates come over the line almost as quickly as you can say it. The top 6 in AM providing a great race and going right towards the end. Very close together indeed. Navarro de Boiva got lapped by the overall leader, and so will be scored 1 lap down by the end, despite the fact he finished in 7th. Was quite a far behind the lot of them anyway. But either way, that's your race 2. from here at Hockenheim, and it's Neil Butler who's won by only 1.5 seconds ahead of Stuart Reynolds, who will retain his championship lead through tonight. Kieran Smart will be third ahead of Jonas Dreyer and Chris Chatterton running out the top 5. Thomas Reiter couldn't quite get into there, and neither could Kenny Hermans. Callum Bierman will finish in 8th ahead of a disappointed Albin Kjellberg. Osius Yomatas rounds out the top 10 with Andy Miller and Paul Busby disappointed to finish in 12th. Harry Wills will be scoring points but will not... was 8 laps down by the end. Thomas Jandrich, 18 laps down at the end of that race. Sebastian Norgran wins by 1.8 seconds in Pro-Am, the biggest winning margin of the 3, which is quite remarkable. Lucas Romano second ahead of Michael Patterman and John Williams, who fought to the line. Jeremy De Boyver quite a way back in 5th, with Phoenix Peel 6th. Daniel Merchant 7th ahead of Alex Bomberg, who had a few seconds over Simon Dodd. Chris Thacker, last driver inside the top 10 ahead of Didier Blanc. Then it was Francois Pedro in the 12th place. He was just battling with Ashraf Haddad towards the end there. Fernando Torres a minute back. Juha Huhtinen will get points from there. So will Edward Packer and Dean Timms, despite the fact that they were so many laps down. Stefan Schuster won't, after his big crash going down towards the hairpin. And finally, the AM results as well. This is unbelievable, by the way, this margin. Botting, Norgran, Franken, Pearce, Bouts, Slates on the lead lap. 3 seconds apart between those 6. Incredible racing here in the slowest category. Navarro De Boyver, 7th place ahead of Glenn Humberstone, with Kurt Van Hohenacker and Jarmo Sestermoinen rounding out the top 10. Jurgen Knockhart was 11th ahead of Craig Schill, then Alistair Hatcher and Timo McKeown. Couple of laps down for Jerome Rains after his very long pit stop. Jesper Starks will get points from 16th, but Mark Bailey and Lewis Boubier will not score points after finishing at 20 laps down each. Well, that is just about going to do it from us here at the Hockenheim. Speaking of Lewis Boubier right there, we are able to now speak to him after finishing so far down. Lewis, congratulations first of all on your performance in race 1. It of course went very well, but I'll start with the bad and end on a more positive note. Just what happened to you there in race 2?
Well, I lucked up in to go for the move, but I was too far back and I don't want to dive bomb anyone in this series. So I tucked back into the stream and unfortunately the car ahead of me just braked very, very early. So to try and avoid the incident, I slammed on my brakes and swerved to the right. Unfortunately, the rear just locked up and I just slid into the wall. It was quite terrifying at the time, but I was making up places, the pace was there, so hopefully in the future I can maybe keep it a bit cleaner. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, this is a couple of race 2s now that you've had problems in, but a race win here tonight in race 1 must be very encouraging for you. How are you looking forward to the rest of the season now, after at least the pace that you've shown here tonight?
Oh yeah, the pace was definitely there tonight. I think the Audi worked quite well here. As you can see, Prime Motorsport and the Audi winning race 1 and race 2 with Connor in the second race. Yeah, so looking forward to the future. You know, I'm glad I can get the wins, especially after the first race last week where I lost it on the final corner. So to get a win under my belt and having the pace for the future races, I think I'm quite happy. Be quite a lot of work to get back in the title fight, but I'll put the effort in.
Still 16 races of this championship to go, so plenty of time, of course. Congratulations on race 1 victory tonight, though, Lewis. We look forward to seeing you again throughout the rest of the season.
Excellent, thank you.
Thanks very much. Lewis Boubier victorious in race 1, not so much in race 2, unfortunately, with quite a big crash there, Zach. AM category, very unpredictable, I've got to say, but when Lewis Boubier manages to string an entire night together instead of just half a night, he's going to be very dangerous.
He is. As he said, it's going to be hard to recover and get back into the title fight, but again, with the drop rounds and there's still a fairly long way left to go in this season, still 8 rounds left. He can still definitely recover it. It's just, again, as you say, trying to string it together, get a good night, get the ball rolling, get that momentum, get that morale and that confidence, and then he should, in theory, be fine. Everyone's going to have bad days. Unfortunately for him, it's come probably at sort of the second worst point of the season. You know, it's not great to have a poor start. It's definitely not great to have a poor end, but he has to shrug it off, get back to it, because in a competitive AM category, you cannot afford to be losing any points at all. And when it comes to the end of the season, definitely going to be one of those things he looks back on with regret.
Certainly will be. Well, that's going to do us that. Oh, well, I say that. Just as we say that, Neil Butler has just about snuck in, so we'll sneak him in since he did win the race. We'll sneak him in. Neil Butler, welcome to the booth. Very, very quickly, of course. Race 2 victory for you on this occasion, coming up from 9th place in the end. So a very good night overall for you. Did you feel like it was going to go this well when you were practicing for this earlier?
I'm not going to lie, the practice was going pretty well. The long runs were definitely better though, so I was looking forward to the second race more than the first. But yeah, everything worked out well in the second race, I think. The lap traffic was in my favour, and I think I was stuck behind the two Merxo for a while, and if they'd have stayed out, then I would have had trouble overtaking them. But because they pit early, it gave me free rein to get my head down and get some decent laps in.
You're only 7 points off the championship lead now. I know it's only early stages, but what are you expecting from this season?
Well, to be fair, I've had a few months off before I started this season, so I was just dipping my toe in the water again, just having a bit of fun. So we'll see. I'm not expecting too much. There's a few guys missing tonight that probably would have give us a good run for the money for sure tonight. So yeah, let's just have fun and see what happens.
Absolutely. We look forward to seeing you again over the next few weeks, Neil. But for now, we'll let you go. Congratulations on the win here tonight.
Cheers, guys.
Thanks very much, Neil Butler. Second race victory here today on that race, and finally as well, we also have Craig Shield, who's going to join us as well. Craig, welcome to the booth. Good to have you here as well. A fairly chaotic AM race towards the end there. But a very enjoyable one nevertheless. You ended up, of course, won that down because of where the leader was and whatever, but how did you feel tonight went overall?
Playing the track, I could actually drive this car around. I was quite happy with myself. I'm new to GT3, the whole team is actually, the whole of 88 Tech, we're all new to this. So yeah, it's all been a steep learning curve for the last 2 weeks.
What are you expecting from the rest of the season? Obviously, as you say, you had a bit of learning to do, but where do you expect to be by the end of this season? Of course, near Christmas.
If I can get up middle of the AM class, I'll be happy. I don't expect to be up near the front because I haven't got the pace. Might come towards the end of the season, but if I can stick within in the middle, somewhere in the middle, I'll be quite happy with that. That'd be a good performance for me.
Absolutely. We look forward to seeing you again over the course of the rest of the season, Craig, but for now we'll let you go. Congratulations on a good performance tonight, and we'll see you again soon.
Yes, thank you very much.
So much. Craig Shield there from the AM category here tonight at Hockenheim. That is just about going to do us tonight, though, for this race. Thanks very much to everybody who's been tuned in on another great night of racing in the World Series League's GT3 Championship Season 4, powered by IMB. Thanks very much for tuning in. I've been Ewan O'Leary. Zach Sweeney has been alongside me, and David Christie has been behind the cameras. And until we see you again in 3 hours' time for the US version of this series, or indeed in 1 week's time for the next edition of the EU Championship when we head to the Red Bull Ring, it's goodbye for now.